All right, folks, let's come back to order here for first docket to consider, which is the zoning map amendment on docket PZ 19019. I'd like to call on Mr. Urban just to kind of outline again, what's being requested and what effect it'll have, on our other decisions.
So again, you're being asked to consider a zoning map amendment on 2.51 acres of property in Oldham County. So I want to reiterate that your authority is only on this section, those 10 lots that are proposed, that 2.51 acres. I know it's part of a bigger plan, but Louisville Metro has authority over the balance of this property. So we really got to focus our thinking down to this 2.51 acres.
Right. All right. And with that being said, Commissioners, do you, anyone have a motion for the consideration on the zoning map amendment? We'll consider that first. Anyone in, I'm sorry. Oh, Ms. Bonet.
I am sick, so if I start to cough, I apologize. On the docket we just heard, I would like to recommend to the fiscal court that we deny the zoning map amendment for multiple reasons. Taking into account what Mr. Urban just said, we are only dealing with the Oldham County section of this development, and sometimes it's very difficult to draw that line. You can look toward Jefferson County and the zoning looks completely appropriate, but to me, if I turn around and look into Oldham County and the land that surrounds this 2 acres, the current zoning is completely appropriate based on what is there and what appears to be planned to be in Oldham County there. I do not see that the zoning suggested is appropriate in the least. I look at the different objectives that the applicant has listed, and some of them I really don't agree with if I am only looking at the Oldham County section. Specifically the transportation goals, given the character and the condition of the roads in Oldham County that would be serving that portion of the development. The community services, there's all sorts of confusion that can be created with lots being split into 2 counties, a road that is in Oldham but is accessed through Jefferson. When you look at fire protection and the school buses, by not allowing the zoning change, we are not blocking the developer from still developing that land. We're not preventing him from utilizing the land into a subdivision. We are just saying that we feel the zoning that is there is appropriate. And all of this is based on the testimony I heard today, and I would like to include in that motion any conditions or restrictions that were listed in our staff report. I don't need not to include that?
No, when you're, just on the zoning map, there aren't any conditions, especially when you're recommending denial if it's.
That concludes my motion.
Mr. Chairman, that sounded pretty good, but Mr. Carter, would you say that that is a valid motion?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Okay, multiple seconds. Mr. Halfling, I saw his hand up, and I'm sorry?
Pick one for the minutes.
I did. Mr. Halfling. And so with that, and this is a motion to deny the zoning map amendment recommendation that will go to fiscal court, and it's a motion to deny. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Hampton.
Just for everybody, just please explain what a yes vote means and what a no vote means, since it's to deny. Just want to be straight.
Sure.
That was good. So if you vote yes, you're voting to support the motion to deny. If you vote no, you're voting against that motion to deny.
Just like to have that every time on this kind of vote.
Right. So a motion in the affirmative would mean that we would make a recommendation to fiscal court to deny the zoning change. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I just needed final clarification. Between the R1 current zoning and the requested zoning, what is the difference in the number of homes that would be built if no zoning change were granted?
Mr.
Yeah, Tom has that.
I
I think
have
it's
looked at that a little bit.
Right. There were two things. In Tom's presentation, he talked about the gross density, and we can put that up again, or the applicant has also, during the testimony, showed a chart. So Tom, can you put up your?
The R1 allows for 2.17 dwelling units per acre. R2A allows for 5.81.
That's the gross density. And so the number of units that were potentially able to be built,
5.65.
that's net density. That, again, is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, I'm
Or
asking-
you want to see that chart that
I'm
showed
asking
how many?
of the 10 homes that are in question, if the zoning change is not approved, they can still build a certain number of homes. How many homes can they still build without the zoning change?
It would be able to build 20,000 square foot per is the minimum for R1.
I think the number was like 5 or 6.
Yes.
Okay.
That was roughly half of what they are proposing.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any further questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none. Now, this is a motion to deny the zoning map amendment on, from R1 to R2A. So a motion in favor would be a recommendation from us to fiscal court to deny, to not approve it. So with that, Ms. Nunn, let's take the vote.
Okay, Ms. Bodine?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Ms. Nasser?
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mr. Halfling?
Yes.
Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Ms. Hagan?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
No.
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
No.
All right, on the motion to deny docket PZ 19019 zoning map amendment has been approved on a vote of 10 to 2. So with that, the recommendation will go to fiscal court that it was be denied. So with that, the docket PZ 19020 cannot be considered. And I guess we will move on into our next docketed item. Ms. Nunn, if you would, read it, please.
Okay, docket PZ-19-021, public hearing regarding the adoption of the updated Oldham County Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, bear warehouses and signs.
Good morning, Amy Alvey, Assistant Director with Oldham County Planning and Development. As Ms. Nunn stated, this is just a, I don't know what the best word. Procedural issue. So we are coming back before the Planning Commission to go over the changes that fiscal court made to the recommendations that you had forwarded to them regarding the updates to the comprehensive zoning ordinance. So on August 6th of 2019, Oldham County Fiscal Court approved the proposed updates and revisions that.
Excuse me a second. Folks, if you all would step out of the courtroom. Oh, thank you.
Okay, so again, on August 6th of 2019, Oldham County Fiscal Court approved the proposed updated updates and revisions that you recommended to them. And in the days following the approval by fiscal court, discussion occurred between some of their members about not allowing barrel warehouses without a distillery on existing agricultural land, limiting the sizes of the warehouses, and adding requirements that distilleries participate in tourism. There was also an additional topic of not allowing wall signs on buildings within 300 feet of the interstate as well. So staff met with a few magistrates to address their concerns, and revised regulations were drafted regarding barrel warehouses, distilleries, and interstate wall signs based off their comments. So we went back through the procedures with them. We did a first reading, and then on September 17th, fiscal court adopted the revised regulations relating to the sections listed below, which is section 020030, which is the AG1 district regulations under conditional uses, section 25320, brew pubs and barrel warehouses, section 260-460, conditional use standards for barrel warehouses, and section 290-150, signs along scenic corridors. So, this is the strike-through version of section 260-460, which discusses removing barrel warehouses as a conditional use, which would have required a public hearing before the appropriate Board of Adjustments in the AG1 zoning. So what you all had recommended to fiscal court was that if someone has existing agricultural land that's zoned AG1, they could have a barrel warehouse on the property if they met these 4 standards listed there. And fiscal court came back and said, no, they did not want to allow barrel warehouses on existing agricultural land through the conditional use process. So that portion was struck from the regulations. And then we added 2 notes under the standards for AG2 that follows the provisions for barrel warehouses. So the first one there in blue says barrel warehouses shall only be permitted when associated with a distillery operation located on the same tract of land which is open for tours a minimum of 4 days per week, with 1 day being a weekend. And item number 2, maximum size of a warehouse cannot exceed the following. It's barrels per warehouse equals annual production times 5 years. All of the other standards were left in place. And again, this was to only allow barrel warehouses in AG2, which requires a zoning change. So this is just kind of a summary spreadsheet here that shows no changes to the setback or height regulations, but it shows where distilleries and breweries, things of that nature, where they would be a permitted use. So AG2, I1 and I2, craft distilleries and microbreweries, AG2, I1, I2, barrel warehouses, again, AG2, I1 and I2. So basically, it takes the barrel warehouses out of the existing AG1 zoning regulations and puts them as a requirement of a zoning change to AG2. And then lastly, there was discussion regarding signs along, wall signs along the scenic corridors. In our current sign regulations, we have item number C that says no freestanding signs or banners shall be located within 300 feet of the center of the nearest travel lane of Interstate 71. This does not address wall signs. Some of the elected officials had concerns with wall signs being all buildings that were located within that 300 feet. So they added the language, no freestanding sign, banners, or wall signs shall be located within 300 feet of the center of the nearest travel lane of Interstate 71. So, what we are asking the Planning Commission to do, Fiscal Court has already adopted these regulations, what you had sent them the first time, and then what the amended changes they had. Staff will be going to the city of Crestwood, LaGrange, and Pewee Valley to do first readings and second readings, and we really want everyone to be on the same page of the documents of what we're recommending for approval. So procedurally, we really need the Planning Commission to move these changes forward with these amended changes forward with the original document, so everyone has the same document and we're all working with the same language. So again, we have scheduled, Crestwood has, they do theirs different than Fiscal Court and the other 2 cities. They'll have their first reading and public hearing on November the 13th. It's almost like December. November the 13th at 7:30, and then LaGrange and Pewee Valley will have their first readings November the 4th, and then their second readings and public hearings on December the 2nd. So what I'm looking for is a motion for the Planning Commission members to forward these recommendations and include them with the original document to be forwarded to the other legislative bodies. I'll be happy to answer any questions too, by the way.
Could you educate us on the distillery side of this? What was their thinking about only having it like that
Oh, to only allow barrel warehouses
with a distillery?
with a distillery?
Yes.
They're looking more towards have the tourism portion of it and not just having barrel warehouses on agricultural land.
No standalone barrel warehouse.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, Mr. Finn.
In this regulation or proposed regulation, we've got barrel well houses only be permitted with a distillery operation and open for tours, and we designate the time. Are we allowed to regulate them that closely as far as how they operate?
What that is, in order for a distillery to be on the bourbon tour, or is it called the bourbon tour? Bourbon Trail,
Okay.
Trail tour. They are required to be open 4 days a week, with one of those days being a weekend. So they're saying that if someone has a distillery and barrel warehouses on the same property, in order to have that barrel warehouse, that distillery has to be part of the Bourbon Trail.
Okay, thank you.
And that's what encourages tourism.
All right, I'd like to go ahead and, if we could, get a motion to affect what Amy's asking for here, and then we'll open it up. If we get a second, then we'll open it up for discussion at that point. Yes, sir. Okay. Got a motion to approve the suggested language that Amy has outlined here. Do we
Well,
have a second?
recommend to the legislative bodies.
Yeah. Okay, and this will be a recommendation to the legislative bodies that we would agree as a body to these changes.
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? Okay. All right, with that, let's go ahead and I guess do
This is just the
a
next
voice
three.
vote.
Branch
We'll
question.
do excuse me, we'll do that vote, yes. Roll call vote.
Okay.
This is a motion to accept changes to make recommendations to the legislative body, changes to move forward.
Okay. Ms. Davis? Yes. Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Ms. Bonet?
Yes.
Ms. Hagan?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mr. Halfling?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Ms. Nasser?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss?
Yes.
The motion to approve sending this language to the legislative bodies, with changes, has been approved on a vote of 12-0. And before we get into the last document item, I just want to say Mr. Halfling is going to recuse himself, I understand, from this discussion. And you want to just tell us, he's living in that area?
I live on Blackmore Lane.
Right, okay. All right. With that, Ms. Nunn, if you would read our last docketed item.
Well, it's not a docketed item, it's just under other business. It's just the extension of expiration for Wolf Lake, yeah. So in your packets, there is a cover letter in there that explains the extension of expiration process. So I'll put it, excuse me, I'll put it on the overhead here. That basically goes through what the process is. So Wolf Lake Estates, the commission is given the authority to extend expiration dates to staff on an annual basis. The policy has a time limit of up to 4 extensions that would be reviewed at staff level for approval or denial. After 4 extension, the plan must be reviewed by the Oldham County Traffic Consultant to determine the review category as outlined in section 290.040. So Wolf Lake Estates is asking for their 9th extension. and was required to have a traffic assessment completed when school was in session. So the applicant was informed in late May of that requirement. On May 28th, the Planning Commission extended their extension of expiration for 6 months to allow the developer time to complete their required traffic assessment. So a traffic assessment was completed on August 29th of 2019 and concluded that based upon the volume of traffic generated by Wolf Lake Estates subdivision and the amount of traffic forecasted for the year 2025, there will be minimal impact to the existing highway network. No potential problems were identified during the assessment, therefore no mitigation is necessary to increase capacity as a result of this development. So I included a copy of the traffic assessment that was done by Ms. Zimmerman with this cover letter in your staff reports. And we also, as part of the process, we send this plan out with the application to all of the serving agencies, and these were the agencies that responded back, listed on the screen. The U.S. Postal Service, they stated that cluster mailbox systems would be required. LaGrange Utility still has sewer capacity. Oldham County Water had no additional comments, and Louisville Water and MSD just sent their comments back that said that it's not in their service area. Part of the original binding elements when this development was approved was a left turn lane from Highway 53 into Blakemore Lane. Obviously, those have been completed already as part of the OCEDA development. So obviously that has already been met, but all of the other existing binding elements that were part of the original approval would still remain. So staff is requesting approval of the extension of expiration for Wolf Lake Estates, and the new expiration date will be November 1st of 2020.
Do we have any indication of when they're gonna move forward on this development, or?
No.
And it's basically unlimited as long as they come back and go and follow these steps?
Yes, sir.
All right. Commissioners, you've heard the request here for an extension of expiration, Wolf Lake Estates. What's the pleasure of the commission? Hey, turn your mic on if you would, Adam.
I make the motion that we extend their expiration date.
Until, what was the date again?
Date, that-
November 1st of 2020.
Okay,
November 21st of 2020.
November 1st.
November 1st
2020.
of 2020.
okay, all right. Do we have a second? Okay, second, Mr. Hampton, seconds. All right, I think we can just do a voice vote on this. Oh, well, sure, absolutely, yep, go ahead.
Yes.
I noticed all the other agencies were notified. Do we know what the criteria was for the school capacity back then when this was approved? Because those requirements have changed over the years.
Their binding elements, they were granted a phasing plan of 35 in 2005, and then the 40 from there. So
And what is our existing school capacity permits allowed per year now that we voted on back not too long ago?
well, they already have these numbers built in.
I understand that, but they
Well-
came in with extensions, correct?
But they already have these numbers, this
school?
anticipated school capacity,
Okay.
students into their capacity.
Okay.
So these are already been counted for.
Yeah, the Board of Education keeps those numbers in
Into
their the- ongoing
Correct.
school projections.
They've already committed this capacity, so it's already in their numbers. Put your mic on.
If they're denied extension, do they lose that school capacity? Right?
I would think they would have to come in with a new plan, so that those numbers would be removed from what the school has already accounted for, and then we go into new capacity planning,
So
correct?
they've held that school capacity for maybe 10 years?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, the plan would expire, therefore, the process would start from the very beginning. If they were going to move forward with this development, they'd have to start with a technical review committee and go through the process.
Correct.
Do they have any a date planned to start?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, sir, Mr. Finney.
On this application, it says economic conditions do not make development possible at this time. from the looks of what's going on in the building community, what's the problem?
I can't speak for the applicant on that. That was their justification from the original economic downturn of the building industry, so.
Is this what is written here? Is this just a copy from an old thing, or is this
No.
new?
No, it's part of their new application.
Thank you.
Ms. Hagan?
What was the total number of the capacity that's being held for them?
There's 145 single-family homes.
Well,
So the school capacity, what was the total number of students that's being held for them?
That was not figured, they didn't have that number.
Well, yeah, back then, we'd have to go dig through the files, because there was a different per
Factor.
household pupil projection at the time. Every year, we update that number, and we'd have to go back and look to see what the projection was for number of
The
students.
form that you saw today did not exist when this development came through.
So I guess what I'm asking is similar to the question down here, which was how many students are being reserved for that
don't know.
development that someone else could use if they were able to move forward with their development? Don't know.
It's not in the minutes either. So I read over the minutes during the last case, and it's not listed in there.
Okay, thanks.
Would you update us on, is that the Hall Brothers? Who's the developer?
It is Carter Manor LLC, and the people that testified was Mr. Crowley was their attorney.
It's- This application for extension of expiration date is signed by Robert Jones.
Yeah, Bob Jones, Jay Hall, and Earl Hedgepeth.
Are, any further questions? Further questions? Yes, Mr. Douglas.
What is our policy about how many extensions one person's or somebody's allowed over a period of time?
There's not a cap. So every year, they will have to do this same process over and come back before the planning commission to ask for an extension.
So
So if the planning commission felt so not to extend it, for them to go back through the entire process again, they would deny the extension request.
So we have nothing in our regulations that says that after 10, 15, 20 years of coming in for extensions, they've got to come in with new plans or new something?
They have, well, they have
I
to.
know the traffic study.
Correct. They have to go through that to see what other impacts have been, and we send that out to the agency. So the school, water, everyone gets it to say whether or not they can still provide capacity. If they can't provide capacity, then they have to come back before the commission.
Do we know, since these plans were approved back then, we've made some changes in our subdivision regulations. Do they comply with those new regulations now in those plans?
It's for the plan that was approved
I
and
know
presented
that.
at that meeting.
I know that.
The caveat in our subdivision regulations says that you can't make new regulations and then force them to comply with them. The only way you can do that is by denying the expiration.
Correct.
So it does, they don't have to comply with current requirements, and I don't think there have been that many changes, but it would have to comply with the old ones.
There were 13 binding elements when this, because this was as part of a zoning change too. So it went to the legislative bodies for approval as well. And it was also annexed into the city of LaGrange.
So, and, just so everybody, be on the same page or whatever, if we were to deny this, this isn't the only one. There's a lot of these out here, so I think we just, we have to be consistent.
3 or 4.
Okay, so we need to be consistent, if we're considering doing something besides extending the recommendation, so.
Well, there's a motion on the floor to extend. We did not ask the developers to come to talk about this because procedurally, it's not a requirement. The motion is to extend it. If for some reason that motion fails, before we get into motion to deny, because I think you then have to do that, I would suggest that if that's the case, that we allow the developers to come back in to testify on some of the questions that you're asking staff that we don't have the answers to. So you got a motion and a second for extension.
Correct. Yes.
So I think you should vote on that.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead. Is any further discussion or questions before we move forward on a vote?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Ms. Smith.
Has the fee for this extension always been $250?
Huh?
Okay. Thank you.
All right, and I think with this, we'll go ahead and do a voice count. I mean, a count with the,
Roll call.
roll call vote, yes. So, and this is a motion to approve the extension to 2020, correct?
Correct.
Okay, on Wolf Lake Estates.
Okay, Mr. Halfling? Oh, you abstain, that's right. Mr. Finney?
No.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Ms. Hagan?
No.
Ms. Nasser?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
No.
Ms. Bonet?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas? Yes. Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Mr. Falvey?
He's not here.
That's right. And King is absent.
Yes.
Mr. Clinton.
Klingenfuss, yes. I knew I was missing somebody. All right.
There's still one missing. Oh, the abstention, right.
All righty, let's see. The motion to approve the extension request of Wolf Lake Estates has been approved on a vote of 8-3, 1 abstention, and 2 absence, but it's been approved. All right, now, before we adjourn, let me ask what we look like for next month.
Most likely, we will have a hearing. I anticipate a filing of a subdivision to come through, but the filing deadline is next Wednesday, so.
Okay, and we do have SRC meeting Thursday night.
We do have SRC meeting. We will go over the same information, just to update everyone tonight, that night of what I discussed today regarding barrel warehouses, and we'll go over the updates to the comprehensive plan and where we're at in that process.
Okay, Mr.
Can you
Urban?
give us the date of next month's meeting? Because I know with the holidays, sometimes I get confused.
Don't. Didn't change that one because I don't think it falls.
It's before Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Let me get my calendar in here. It'll be the 26th, November the 26th.
Okay, any additional questions before we adjourn? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Davis?
Uh-huh. It's here in the conference room, the large conference room at 5 o'clock.
And anybody's that can attend is certainly welcome. So, all right, with that, Mr. Urban, anything you have?
No, sir.
Okay, we will stand adjourned. Thank you all. All right. Well, that was
Interesting.